Maybe if you're like me, you've had dozens of those new ZV-1 videos in your subscription feed, and we've also got one. So we're gonna talk about it and address one of the big reasons I think it's getting so much airtime in the filmmaking community. Let's do it. Hey friend, Levi here. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. It's great to have you. So first, let's address this ZV-1 and why I think people are talking about it. Again, there was dozens and dozens of videos uploaded from some of my peers in the filmmaking space, and they're really good videos. I'm gonna link some of them down below. But what I don't think many of them are actually addressing fully head on as directly is just how relieved we are in the filmmaking space to have a really safe option to recommend to one of the most common questions we get, which is, what camera do you recommend for beginners? Now, I don't fault anyone for asking this question. It's the age-old problem when you're getting into a new industry of any kind or a new hobby, is you want to know what's the latest and greatest in my budget, what's the pros and cons, what's going on here. But for the last 3 to 5 years, answering that question clearly has always come with a lot of caveats, especially in that sub 800 and below camera category. Most of the recommendations that I've tried to find in this space before, there's cameras that you can get good results with for this sort of self-filming process, but then it's always had this push and pull of usually you need some specific pieces of gear to compensate for where the camera has weaknesses. Things like having a monitor up top so you can see what you're recording, or if it has a flip around screen, maybe the autofocus isn't good, or maybe it doesn't shoot in 4K and you want that, or maybe there isn't frame rate options. It always feels like you have to make a recommendation, but then have this list of reasons about why it might not work for someone. One of the reasons why I'm talking about the ZV-1, and I think most of my peers are, it's a really awesome, easy to learn entry-level camera, and you're gonna see in this video that some of the results that you can get out of it look really great, but then also it can fit really nicely as an additional camera in a kit. Maybe you want a top-down filming camera for gear reviews, or you want to live stream with it. There's just a lot of little flexibility that can come out of a small camera package. Okay, the ZV-1. It's basically as if an A6000 series camera had a love child with an RX 100 and was infused with more self-filming video features. One of the most important being that tilt-out, flippy, screeny thing. This honestly to me is the most important. I think every camera should have it, and I'm really grateful to see it on the first Sony camera. I believe this is the first Sony camera with a tilt-out, flippy screen. None of this flip-up stuff, just it's what we asked for, a flip-out screen. It's got a quick boot up time when you flip out that screen, which is a nice touch. It's got an internal ND, a better onboard mic, and this well thought out little puffy mic windscreen thing is a nice touch. The autofocus is fantastic, and that might honestly be one of the heavy reasons that I keep recommending Sony style compact cameras, is it's just so, you don't have to think about the autofocus, and they added this new product showcase feature where if you hold up an object, it'll jump right to that object and then back to your face. So Sony really has just been knocking it out of the park with their eye detection autofocus as well. So the autofocus is really dependable. It's got a great 4K image when you give it enough light to work with, no record limit, plenty of high frame rate options, dependable color science, reduced rolling shutter from its APS-C counterparts, a big enough aperture at the wide end so you get some of that depth of field, bokeh, blurry background action out of a small little compact 1-inch sensor. They did pack a lot of features into something this small and compact, so it's worth addressing. Yes, this is a small compact camera, which inevitably is going to come with some compromises, especially when it's targeted towards that sub $1,000 market. So the aperture gets smaller really quickly as you zoom in, essentially making it really hard to get depth of field unless you're filming really close to an object zoomed in, or if it's on that wide end and it's just within a couple feet. So this isn't going to be a depth of field B-roll machine. The ND is great, but it's only 3 stops, which means in full outdoor sunlight, it's not quite enough to keep you at that perfect shutter angle for the wide open aperture. Speaking about the lens, it's not quite wide enough for that iconic vlogging style look that Casey made so popular. I almost would accept a prime lens over this zoom if it was wider and had still that depth of field, but I know there's compromises with small lenses like this, but I just wish it was like a 16-35 equivalent instead of a 24-70. It's a nice touch that the ports are on the opposite side that the screen flips out, so if you have mics and stuff plugged in, it doesn't obstruct the view of the monitor itself. But I have to say, a camera coming out in 2020 with a USB Type B mini micro USB cable is just frustrating. I think every camera should have USB-C, and talking about USB, you're gonna wanna power it by USB a lot. So that brings us to our biggest negative of this camera, which is with the battery, I was able to get just over an hour of continuous 4K recording, which is not that much. So if you're out and about turning it on and off, you're gonna burn through these batteries quick. I would think of it as a GoPro-like battery. If you've used a GoPro, you know that you need to carry 4 or 8 of them on a day shoot if you're gonna be actually using the camera. So that's probably the biggest obstacle most people will run into. So I recommend getting a battery bank. This one's one of my favorites because you can charge it by USB-C and take power from it by USB-C. But I have this really long, massive USB micro cable that I'm gonna be using to film with this camera outside, because honestly, the battery life is really bad. So I don't even know if that list of pros and cons is helpful if you're actually considering this as a good fit for you. But I guess the short of it is, if you're looking for a camera to film yourself that fits sort of that compact camera size checklist, while still being able to emulate the look of some of its more advanced counterparts like the A6000 series, getting some of that depth of field, having better features for actually filming yourself and using these cameras as video cameras, not just compact stills cameras, I think the ZV-1 is going to be a really good contender in that category. And if you can work around some of the hiccups, I think this might be a really dependable addition to your kit. If it's the first one you're starting out with, or if you want one of those more easy to pull out, quick moment capturing cameras to work alongside one of your more professional cameras. And that's actually how I'm gonna address how I would use this later in this video, is both for filming my YouTube stuff and the professional work that I do for my company. Before we do that, I wanted to tell you about the sponsor of this video, and that is our friends over at Squarespace. So Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to build your website. And I first found out about them as a customer when I was able to build a better looking website for myself in about 15 minutes in a coffee shop than I'd been tinkering with for the previous 6 months using other solutions. And that's because I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to web design. And the best part about Squarespace is that you don't need to know, but you can still get really functional, beautiful results. So I recommend heading over there, and you can try one of their beautiful designer built templates. Get going, start putting your own content in there, and you'll start to see your website come to life. And this is awesome because you can really customize if you want e-commerce, if you want scheduling functionality, if you want to have a contact form. They make it really easy to just drag and drop different sections, and you don't have to update or patch anything ever. So that means you're not going to put some plugin on there and accidentally break the whole website. I may or may not have done that before with my websites in the past. I recommend, if you've been putting off actually building a website for whatever it is that you're trying to launch, you should probably get to it. So go try one of their free trials, give it a go, put your content in there, and when you're ready to commit, make sure you use my code for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So in the past year, I've really come to appreciate even more so having small compact cameras and using those alongside my more proper filming setup when I'm actually trying to document my own projects. So something kind of new on the channel this year is I tried to document my journey into doing more of my own outdoor extreme sports. Maybe extreme is the wrong word to use there, but I documented my journey into backcountry splitboarding, and I tried to make some great videos while doing that. And when I'm in my sweet spot, it's when I've got my camera in my hand and I'm using it to the fullest, knowing its limitations and grabbing sweet B-roll. But it's not just B-roll that makes a good video, it's the story. And so getting good drone shots is easy, but as I'm actually doing the adventure, making a video of me doing the adventure, for most people that have tried to do that, you know, it takes like twice as long to get proper filming of that. And oftentimes the moments where I'm like suffering up a mountain, I'm most reluctant to pull out the camera and actually film something, but I know I need to, and there's a little bit of that resistance there to actually do it justice, and I miss moments. So I'm kind of paranoid about that, and having a small compact camera, what I resorted to was just pulling out my iPhone quick and just talking to the iPhone so I would actually get the sound of the moment so I wouldn't miss it. And using a small compact camera just right in my pocket here in my backpack as I'm out doing something is really powerful. And this last season of snow sports, I tried to do that with a GoPro, and it worked sort of, but I ran into issues where I can't see what I'm recording and the sound is really bad. The mic, if you just get any little bit of water in there, or if you're moving it all on the top of a mountain, it's really bad. I've tried using the RX100, and that was probably the closest option. The price point felt a little steep if that's only what I was going to use it for, because that one didn't have as wide of an aperture. It almost felt like I could just be doing it with an iPhone sometimes. That had other features like being able to zoom in really far, but that wasn't quite what I was looking for. The ZV-1 is checking a lot of the boxes. What I appreciate about it is that flip around screen. The color science is far superior to some of the small compact cameras from Sony in the past, which is pretty cool. The autofocus is spot on. We are getting some depth of field here when I'm at the widest and I'm at 1.8. And that kind of leads us nicely into the second area that I would use small compact cameras like this. And that's in my more formal, proper documentary shooting. And essentially what I mean by that is when I'm actually filming other people and I'm trying to pull out all the stops and do my best filmmaking. Because let's be honest, when I'm making YouTube videos, I'm not always going all out. I'm trying to do it at a sustainable pace, but usually a couple times a year, I'll follow some athletes on a project and try to make something that's like really awesome and just kind of go all out on it. And typically on a shoot like that, I would use one dedicated main camera. So if I was going to shoot on the Sony ecosystem, I would definitely try something like the FX9 right now. That's a really solid option. The FS5 is a solid option. And then also with like an A7 III. So the S3 isn't out yet. So that's kind of the two cameras that I would use, but having a small compact guy like this actually fits that ecosystem really well. One for production vlogs, so you can just pull it out real quickly and film yourself. But again, that's in the YouTube realm. But how I've used compact cameras like this in the past, typically it's been like an A6300, and that's putting it in an auto mode, autofocus, passing it off to someone when something interesting is about to happen and having them just capture it for me. You can never have enough coverage of stuff when it's a once in a lifetime kind of moment. So things like world records being set or people taking rafts off waterfalls. And another way I'd also use this is mounting a smaller compact camera on top of my main camera, having the compact camera shooting in a high frame rate mode, and then using my main camera and just kind of spraying and praying that I just capture cool shots and then sifting through it later. And that's actually how I got this shot that I really like on the A6300. It's not framed perfectly, but the image quality that I'm seeing out of the ZV-1 is actually very comparable to the A6300, especially with that 18-55 lens. Even just having like 3 or 4 compact small cameras on outdoor shoots would actually be, I think, really beneficial, because yes, I can split hairs all day about trying to get the best film shots, but one thing I've just had to come to accept is getting coverage of stuff, like actually capturing it from different perspectives, is oftentimes a lot more important than just that one really epic shot that you can't really build a full sequence out of. And then your story doesn't really have any building or tension because you didn't have all the shots you needed to make it happen. So, and we've made it to the top of this little hike. That's Cultus Lake right back there. We are looking out at the Fraser Valley. It's a beautiful evening out here. I'm curious what you at home have been thinking about the footage, so kind of let me know in the comments what you think about the quality of this stuff, because I still haven't been able to see much footage from it. And this is probably the best real world vloggy style test stuff that I've done. As I've been doing this hike, I've tried to pick off little B-roll shots that are a little bit more scenic and cinematic, quote unquote, and it doesn't really shine there amazingly, mostly because of the limitations with the sensor size, and basically right when you zoom in it starts stopping down, so you end up at 2.8 really quickly. And f2.8 on this sensor size really struggles to get focus separation, which is kind of required in a lot of senses to make a shot feel dynamic and interesting and not distracting and not look like it's shot on an iPhone. So where I'm realizing the strengths of this is at the widest focal length, most open aperture. That's what it is right now. And that's getting us at least some background separation. So it doesn't have that full GoPro look that I'm sure most of you are aware of, where everything's in focus. I still wish that this lens was wider though, if that's how I'm most often going to use it, because I don't see myself zooming in that much, to be honest with you. I don't think that's where this camera is really going to shine. I'm going to use it mostly all the way wide, filming myself. I think that's how they marketed this camera. That's what it's geared towards. It's a content creator style, talk to the camera style camera. So I do wish that they had been able to make like a 16-35 equivalent with still a wide enough aperture to get some background separation. But there's probably some technical limitations about why that didn't work, or some cost barrier or something like that. But I would like to see that in a camera this size. Even if it meant having a fixed lens, I would gladly take that trade-off, to be honest. So truthfully, that's one of the biggest hiccups for me as far as making this, the ZV-1, one of those kind of no-brainer style recommendations, where for a long time, anybody that did adventure filmmaking, it's kind of like you got to have a GoPro in your bag just because you're filming adventure stuff, so have it with you. I think this camera and cameras like this will become kind of that thing that most content creators will either, one, start on this style of camera so they'll always have it, or two, have it in their kit so that way when they're doing travel vlogging, they can always pull out and get those quick moments, and they just have an easier to use camera. So I guess in closing, it's only fair to address kind of the concept that I even opened in this video, which was, am I going to recommend this to people that are asking for which camera should they get as a beginner who wants to film personal videos on themselves? I'll probably direct them to this video and ask them, you know, keeping in mind just some of the limitations of different camera systems, if this is within your budget and it's meeting some of the needs you want, I think it'll be a really strong option. So I guess the answer for now is yes. With any camera release, there's always things that continue to develop into the future. So I'm not gonna go ahead and claim that this is an end of the line review and that's what I'm gonna recommend from now on. But you better believe that I'm certainly excited that Sony is now adding flip out screens to cameras. That to me is super exciting. And Sony's a massive player in this compact camera game. I think they're the biggest player. They sell the most cameras in this category, I believe, by far. So to have a flip out screen on it, if that means that's the direction they're heading, that can only mean good things for the people that make videos on the internet. So those are some of my thoughts. I hope you didn't feel like this video is trying to force you to buy something you don't want. I don't know. I do still really love gear, even though I don't review it all the time. So thanks for watching this and sticking along for my little, for what all became this video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Remember, life's better when you make stuff. Peace.